Tzaddik Ches Amud Beis 98b. Continue our discussion on the pains leading up to Mashiach, and then we'll talk a little about the profile of Mashiach and some interesting comments on the identity of Mashiach himself. We'll try to make sense of what this all means. So it's about in the middle. The line begins with the word hachet, and the second word is v'chein. Almost right in the middle. The line begins with the word hachet, and the second word is v'chein. So we stated that there were two sages who said they would like to live in, that they are very happy for Mashiach to come, but they'd rather not come in their lifetime because they're worried about suffering too much. And we had Rav Yosef, who we spoke about yesterday quite a bit, who was in his humility willing to sit in the shadow of the dung of Mashiach's donkey, in his humility willing to take all the shame, and so that Mashiach come. And even the world that he voluntarily disengaged from and making himself blind, that materialism itself should be elevated even in its lowest place. And now we get to another sage who said that he also would rather avoid the pains of Mashiach.
I think maybe one of the reasons of seeing it, not that they don't want to see other people suffering. I mean, that's what, and Rabbi Yosef probably can't see, because the pangs of Mashiach, it's like not he's going to suffer himself.
Yeah, I'd rather not. Look, he says he's clearly willing to take on shame. I don't know if he.
I understand differently. Like it's not that they're worried about themselves. It's not so much themselves.
Yeah, we talked about that before. That it could be the people around them. We talked about that.
Like I was thinking, like a surely, like a person may survive himself, but he saw the things around them.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
That some person is able to escape.
Yeah.
He saw other things going on. That means.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Not that he's worried about himself or his own merit.
When we first went to Gemara, we talked about that. Yeah.
Because it fits very well also for Beit Sheni for sure. It's not any individual sin; it's the collective of people.
Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says a similar thing. Yaisi let Mashiach come v'leich. I shouldn't be the one to see it. Reish Lakish said, "My timer. What's the reason why you're worried about Mashiach's coming? Ilema. Should you suggest?" And this is a very interesting rebuttal from Reish Lakish, which the Gemara does not quote Rabbi Yochanan responding to. And it's very interesting, as you'll see. First I'll translate it, I'll tell you why I find it interesting. My time, what's the reason that you're afraid of Mashiach's coming? Ilema, should you suggest that maybe Mishum because the verse reads, with respect to Mashiach's coming, Kasher Yonus Ish B'Pnei, like a man running away from a lion, and he bumps into a bear. So he's running away from one danger and meets another danger. He finally makes it home, escaping the first two dangers. And he puts his hand on the wall to rest. And a snake bites him. Wherever he goes, he's being chased after by danger. So says Reish Lakish, I'll show you. You don't have to wait for Mashiach's coming to see that kind of pain. I'll show you right in this world people suffer this way. In other words, Reish Lakish is rebuttaling to Rabbi Yochanan, what are you worried about Mashiach's coming because there's going to be so much shame because of this verse? Well, I'll show you right now there's all this shame. You don't have to worry, and all this pain people are running away from and constantly meeting. You don't have to wait for Mashiach's coming to see that. In other words, no reason to be worried about it. You're anyway suffering. It's quite an interesting rebuttal. I mean, there's more than one verse describing the pains leading up to Mashiach. Why did you choose this one? And it's kind of like telling him, you're suffering anyway, might as well enjoy Mashiach coming. It's kind of the rebuttal he's giving him. And the Gemara doesn't record a response from Rabbi Yochanan, which is interesting. So what's the rebuttal?
Maybe it's too painful for him to respond to you.
It's possible. It's possible. It's interesting also because Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish have a very interesting relationship. They were brother-in-laws. They were chavrusa, study partners. And the end was tragic, unfortunately. But I would imagine this is before their tragic end, in which they have this very familial, deep friendship. So they kind of knew what was going on in each other's life.
So maybe it was also a shalom bayit type of situation where it was painful. He didn't want
we're going to see.
Yeah.
So we're going to see. So he says, Ba, come ve'erach, and I'll show you dugmas ve'el similar pattern of people suffering and running away from one torture to meet another. Here in this world, you don't have to wait for Mashiach's coming. How's that? That person goes out to his field where he works, where he owns, center, and he meets the center. The center is the the government agency who's responsible for delineating property lines. And it's the worst guy you see, because everybody, when he's not there, everybody knows where their fields end and where their field begins, and they work on their thing. And then all of a sudden, one guy makes a problem, and the guy arrives and says, "No, you're 5 inches too much here. You're getting a fine for this. You're getting a fine for that." And the guy can't even get his work done because bureaucratic red tape. So he meets this. So this is like the lion, the first danger he meets in the verse. Nichnas the air. He gets back. He enters the city on his way back from work. So he had a stressful day at work. He's on his way home. Comes into the city. And now the tax collector arrives. Says, that field that the guy delineated halfway to you? Okay, you got to pay extra tax on that. Your house, you pay extra tax on that.
Welcome tax.
Sorry?
Welcome
tax. He's like someone who meets a bear. The second danger that the verse describes. Nichnas the Beisa, he finally makes it home after this whole stressful day. And he meets his sons and daughters. We tell them and they're sitting starving. He needs to feed them. After a whole stressful day where he can barely make any money, because by the time he got home, he already paid off the tax collector. He had to pay off the guy who's doing property lines. So he feels like a guy who was bitten by a snake. So you've already have this suffering here in this world. What do you have to worry about? So I don't know, maybe the next line is maybe this next line is Rabbi Yochanan's response, or it could be the Gemara's commentary. This might be Rabbi Yochanan's response. Anyway, rather, it's not that verse that's bothering him, because that suffering exists already. But rather, let me show him the because the verse says, "Shalu urdu," ask, please, and go see. Im yeled zachar, can a male give birth? Madur reisi. So if men can't give birth, madur reisi. This is the verse saying. It's kind of a cryptic verse. But go ask and see if men can give birth. They can't. So madur reisi kol gever yad achalatzav. Why do I see every man holding his groin, ki yeleda, like a woman who just gave birth, who's in pain? And their faces turn green. That's the verse. They don't give birth, but they're walking around in pain. So what's the deal? So the Gemara asks, what does this mean? I see all men walking around with this pain. So Omar Rav Bar Yitzchak, Rav Bar Yitzchak, Omar Rav, the name of Rav, explains this verse on a drash way, a kind of answering the puzzle for us. It says, Misha kol gvura shaloi, kol gever, which means all man. The word gever, meaning man, could also come from the root word gvura, which means power. So kol gever, all power. In other words, the all-powerful one, God Himself. Misha kol gvura shaloi, the one to whom has all the power. So now let's read the verse. Come and see if man can give birth. Okay, I see the all-powerful one, God, whose hand is on his groin and he's in pain like a woman who just gave birth. So we're talking about the pain of God now. And what does this mean? That there's all faces have turned green, faces plural. So we're talking about the singular God, and then we're talking about a pain that's in plural. So I see the all-powerful God, but then I see faces in plural that are in pain. So who's that? Rabbi Yochannan explains. So this is indeed, I guess, Rabbi Yochanan's rebuttal. The conversation doesn't seem clear, but it seems that this might be Rabbi Yochanan's rebuttal. I'm not worried about my own pain, but I'm worried about God's pain. And that's why he's worried about Mashiach's coming. I'm worried about God's pain, and as we'll see, the Jewish people collectively. There's different ways to understand this Gemara. We're going to go with one of them. So Rabbi Yochannan says, what does this mean that the faces turned green from pain? Pamalia Shalmaila, this is the heavenly court. These are the angels in heaven, the divine sphere. Upamaya Shamata, and the earthly sphere, the Jewish people. So I see the kingdom of heaven in pain and the Jewish kingdom on earth in pain. How's that? When God comes and says, look, I made Jews, I made non-Jews. And therefore when destruction is going to come, it's not going to discriminate. So how could I go start selecting, God says, between that one suffering, that one not suffering? And therefore, even though the intent might be the ultimate redemption of the Jewish people, but the process that lead there may not discriminate between those who are worthy and those who are unworthy, between the Jew and the non-Jew. And thus, the heavenly sphere is in pain, the Jewish people are in pain, and in some sense, God Himself is in pain.
Also, the Hashem has to destroy the wicked non-Jews, put the Jews back in Israel. Even Hashem is concerned about that. Like the same thing with the Malachim wanting to sing Shir.
So the rebuttal therefore might be that Rish Lakish says, look, I see your life, and there's already pain in your life. What are you worried about Mashiach's coming? And Rabbi Yochanan might be responding, there's a global issue I'm worried about here. There's a divine issue. There's God himself is in pain. But the verse describes that the man is holding his own groin. So in other words, there's two sets of pain here. There's the men whose faces are green, and then there's the man, the all-powerful one who's holding his groin. So there's God in pain, as it were, holding his groin, meaning it could metaphorically mean he's in pain for his Jewish people, who are the fruit of his loin. As it were, children, God are kind of, I'm expanding the meaning of the Gemara here. It's not the literal meaning of the Gemara, but one might suggest that God, the verse is describing a man who's holding his groin in pain. That's the literal description of the verse. And we said that the man here is describing is the all-powerful one. So that means God himself is in pain. The pain coming from his groin. That is to say, perhaps he's in pain from his children, from the Jewish people. And furthermore, there's the pain of the heavenly sphere, the kol panim, the faces that are green, the pain of the heavenly sphere, the angels are in pain, and the Jewish people are in pain. So my own pain I can handle, as Rabbi Yochanan is kind of saying. Meeting the tax collector, meeting this one, okay, I can deal with that. But God's pain, Jewish people's pain, and the pain of heaven, that's already too much. I don't want to see that.
And even the pain of the non-Jews.
It's people non-Jewish, right? God's saying, I'm not discriminating, that there's destruction coming, and it's not going to necessarily discriminate between the Jew and non-Jew. There's pain of everything.
So incredible that before we actually go through Yonah, the concept of we should be concerned about the non-Jews sort of.
Yeah, Nineveh is not a Jewish town. That's right.
It's remarkable that how could we have any attribute such as compassion and feel the pain of others if God doesn't feel it, because the only attributes we ever have are those, and the negative attributes are part of it's the nister, it's the other part, on the other side of what is good.
Yeah,
it's all connected.
Yeah, talking about Yonah. If you remind me next year, we'll learn Yonah. I've been wanting to do that, to learn Yonah properly with all the commentaries. It's a very fascinating book. Maybe next time, maybe next year. But anyway, so the next line also has different commentaries. We're going to go with one of them. Amar Papa says, Hanada Amar Inchi. This is what the meaning of the colloquial saying. Rohit v'nafal Torah, you run and the ox falls. V'azal v'sadi leisusi b'iraya, and you put a horse in its place, even though the horse doesn't work as well. But you take what you can get. So,
which is a tremendous burden.
Yeah, so it's
the much stronger animal, of course, is the ox.
That's what the Gemara is saying. So, in other words, it's kind of alluding to this idea that between God, at this point, when destruction comes and God's not discriminating between the Jew and the non-Jew, God, as it were, so to speak. So the glory of the Jews diminished, and the horse, some other nation which may not be as worthy, because it's not an ox, will get the glory, will get the work. At least that's at least one way of understanding it. Rashi gives a different understanding there.
With the substitution.
There's different either substitution or it's still around.
Even though the Jews do too, but none to be pushed out of Israel, whatever. Even that's right for Hashem.
Yeah, there's different ways of understanding this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Gemara here. Now the Gemara gets into.
So we see from this that clearly Rabbi Yochanan is talking about a global thing, not personal.
That's the point, yeah. So Rabbi Yochanan, that's not not clear. The Gemara doesn't say like Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan responded, but the Gemara kind of interludes with some other response. So it seems like that's Rabbi Yochanan's rebuttal.
Even Rabbi Yochanan says himself later, anyways.
That's not Rabbi Yochanan speaking. That's the Gemara quoting him.
Rabbi Yochanan.
That's the Gemara quoting him.
But he says that.
He's not responding to there.
No. I'm saying Rabbi Yochanan said in general.
Rabbi Yochanan said it elsewhere. So the Gemara is introducing what he said to this conversation, but we don't know what
we're concerned about the global.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how the conversation went down between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan, but it's clear that the Gemara is bringing other statements from Rabbi Yochanan to try to put into perspective what Rabbi Yochanan might have been worried about. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure exactly how the conversation went, but it's clear from the Gemara that this is the context of Rabbi Yochanan's, what Rabbi Yochanan would have been worried about. Not my own pain, but the global pain, including the pain of God himself, as it were.
This is fantastic indirect teaching, though, because the fact that we're speaking to someone, we should always know, not only is what he's saying to us now, but ensure we understand his encyclopedia of references, the dictionary.
Yeah, that's how the Gemara operates.
Portraits, and just to know what the whole person is all about, to ensure that when we're speaking to someone, God forbid, we're not thinking of only what he's saying at this very moment,
but who it is and what he's thinking.
Exactly.
The Gemara very much operates that way.
Essence to his life.
The Gemara very much operates that way, always bringing other things they have said to try to put into context what they're saying here. It's very much
the only way we could also, in our relationships, recognize that and ensure that we're sensitive enough to be able to understand everyone's nuances.
Yeah.
And all the various elements of fear, anger, depression, and despair.
Don't speak to the question, speak to the questioner.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I want to do the next piece of Gemara because it's Well, we may have to talk about this more when we meet again. But I at least want to frame this Gemara, because this Gemara is very, very, very crucial in understanding what Mashiach is, not just the era, but the person. The person Mashiach himself, the identity of the Mashiach himself, to understand who he is as an individual. The next Gemara is crucial for that, as we'll see. We're going to have to talk more about that, because we've kind of went through the era, like the Gemara is ordered a little bit backwards in a way. We started right at the beginning with the era of the resurrection, which is actually the last stage. We moved back to the era of the Mashiach. We moved back to the era leading up to the Mashiach, and now we're going even backwards to the Mashiach, the person himself. In other words, we're moving back closer towards our time, as it were. Moving backwards, if you look at the overarching story of the whole Gemara as we begin a few weeks ago. So now we're going to the identity of Mashiach himself. And the Gemara says like this. Amar Rav Gidol. Rav Gidol says, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. This is the transition into that discussion. Asidin Yisrael Achli Shan the Mashiach. The Jews will eventually enjoy, literally eat, but enjoy of the years of Mashiach's coming. Big statement. Like Amar Rav Yosef, he says, Pshita, obviously. We've been talking about Mashiach the whole time. He's like making this prophetic statement. The Jews are going to enjoy the time of Mashiach. Okay, like who else and why not? So there has to be something. Who's going to eat it? Who's going to enjoy that time of Mashiach's coming? Chiluk ubilik. Chiluk ubilik is like John Doe. John Doe, Joe Schmo. Who else is going to enjoy it? Obviously it's going to be us. So says the Gemara, no. Lafuke, Rav Gidol is making the statement to negate the opinion of Rabbi Hillel, of a sage named Rabbi Hillel. The Amar, for Rabbi Hillel said, Ein Mashiach Yisrael. There's not going to be the era of Mashiach. Not happening. Why? Because they've already enjoyed it during the time of Chizkiah. You remember before that we said that Chizkiah could have been Mashiach, and the war with Nebuchadnezzar could have been the war of the war with Sanhedrin. Could have been the war of Gog and Magog. So Hillel is saying, yeah, that was already it. Now, does it literally mean there's not going to be Mashiach coming? I very much doubt it. But in the context of the next Gemara, we might understand what he means.
There's not Hillel, just the Hillel, not Hillel.
Not the Hillel. I don't think so, at least. There's quite a few Hillels.
Okay.
Remember, when you say the first Hillel and the last Hillel, you're talking about a span of almost 1,000 years between the first and last Hillel quoted in the same Gemara. And this one has a Hillel with a Yud, which I don't know who that is.
Hillel's never called Rabbi, so Hillel's just called Hillel by name.
He'll be just Hillel, not Rabbi Hillel, yes. Look at the test to see who it is. Anyway. So Amar Rav, now Rav says like this. And fully understanding this. Lo ivra alma, the world has not been created, El David, for David. King David. It was worth the creation of the whole world for King David. And that's why it was created for him. We're just going to translate literally a little bit more, and it'll help us understand a bit. Shmuel Amar Shmuel says, not Moshe. The world was created for Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the one that was created for. And the whole world was worth it just to have him. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, Mashiach. The world is created for Mashiach. So let's understand this a little bit, and perhaps this will help us understand Chizkiah. When we say the world is created for Mashiach, let's just start with that one. I'll give you a comment from the Rabbi, which kind of helps us frame all of this. When you say the world is created for Mashiach, what you're basically saying is that the world itself cannot be an obstacle to Mashiach's coming. It can't be. Because it's not as if, it's because the whole purpose of it. No, it's not as if the world exists, and it's one force, and then there's like a divine, there is this, in other religions you have this duality where Satan, devil, whatever you want to call it, creates negative reality, and then there's a godly reality that has to counterforce it. And that's not true of Judaism. There is only one God, and he creates all realities, both what appears as a positive and that which appears as a negative. The question is only what's his purpose. We discussed in chapter 21, 22 in Tanya, where it talks about Chitzenes Ratzon, Primis Ratzon, all to say that everything's created by Hashem, obviously. Hashem is the only true reality. And the only question is this item that God's creating the primary purpose, or is there a secondary purpose leading to something else? So Torah, mitzvahs, is the primary purpose for Hashem's creation. The rest of this world is only secondary to augment and to create a world in which Torah and mitzvahs make sense. In other words, Torah and mitzvahs only make sense when there's the option for sin. So even the purpose of sin itself is so that there's an option for Torah and mitzvahs. One, therefore, is a secondary purpose and one's a primary purpose. So in this context, you have the same thing true of Mashiach's coming. The world itself was created for Mashiach's coming. It's not like the world's created and it's a bad thing. Mashiach's going to come from like some other reality and fight back against what the world offers. No. The very world itself was only created for the purpose of Mashiach's coming, and therefore the world itself cannot be a contradiction for Mashiach's coming, because that's why it was created. Even that which appears to be in opposition to the messianic revelation is really created for Mashiach's coming. Just part of the process is that the revelation of Hashem has to come from a place of concealment, and it has to be brought out from the people, from below to above, etc., etc., as we explained here at length on a number of occasions. And therefore, when these people say the world is created for King David, the world is created for Moshe Rabbeinu, the world is created for Mashiach, they're all saying the same thing. Because David, Moshe, and Mashiach all are living for this purpose. What did Moshe Rabbeinu live for? He lived to reveal God in this world. And he was at a crucial stage in that. The giving of the Torah was a crucial stage in this world arc story of revealing godliness in this world. The first and primary stage is the giving of the Torah. King David himself is also part of that process. The household of David is essentially the focal point of this revelation, setting the stage for the first temple, which eventually sets the stage for the third temple to be built, etc. And of course, Mashiach himself fulfills that. And in that sense, Chizkiah was Mashiach. We've talked about this when we learned the Gemara when the Gemara said that Chizkiah should have been Mashiach. The truth was he was Mashiach, in the sense that he was a living person who filled this mission, not in its completion necessarily, but he was part and parcel of creating that mission. He was a vital step in creating this reality of revealing godliness in this world. And that will help us understand the next Gemara, when the Gemara is going to talk about who the identity of Mashiach is. And the Gemara is going to give a whole bunch of options. And of course we know that all of Torah is true. How do you have a bunch of options? Right? When you have there's a machlek, when you have like a dispute in halach and Jewish law, so it's a theoretical abstract argument. Should the law be this way or should the law be that way? So I could say they're both right in their analysis, but which one how you behave is only one option, right? But when you argue over reality, is the cup red or the cup blue? What are you arguing about? Either it's red or it's blue, right? So you give a bunch of names, like the Gemara is about to give us a whole bunch of identities for Mashiach. Well, which one is it? It's either one or the other. It can't be all of them. But a lot of what we just explained, and that's why I think the Gemara quotes this here at the beginning, it frames it properly. Because all right. Because all the people identified in this Gemara, as we'll see, are all people who lived their lives for that purpose, and therefore they were Mashiach. They actually were. Not the ultimate, necessarily. But they were Mashiach in the sense that they were spiritual progeny of Mashiach, and that they lived their lives toward that purpose, even if they didn't realize it in their lifetime. And in that sense, the Rebbe would say that every Jew is Mashiach. That's right. Every Jew is nitzutz Mashiach shabai. Is a spark of Mashiach in him. Nitzutz Moshe Rabbeinu shabai, a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in him. All because every Jew has a part of him that makes him central to this ultimate process of bringing Mashiach. Which also explains the famous Gemara, which says that Mashiach only comes when all the souls are born. Why? Because every single soul has a part of him that fulfills this mission of revealing godliness in this world, and therefore every Jew has within him a spark of Mashiach, and therefore he is Mashiach in some sense. And the mission really is that every Jew should reveal within him that Mashiach spark. And the question is, only to what degree? So when you have a tzaddik, like the Gemara is going to identify Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who in his lifetime, he lived fully living up to the spark of Mashiach within him. And therefore he is Mashiach, even if he didn't end up living it in the full sense. Another way you can frame it, and this is the way I've framed a lot of these issues, and I believe I have quite solid grounding to say this, is the distinction between the halachic Mashiach and the spiritual Mashiach. When the halacha describes a Mashiach, the halacha is describing a specific halachic process. The person does this, he restores the Davidic line, he collects all the Jewish people into Israel, etc., etc., etc. But this halachic Mashiach can only do his halacha if the spiritual Mashiach is done. Meaning to say, the world is ready and primed for this revelation of this one individual to do the halachic process. Now, this spiritual process of bringing the world to Mashiach's time is dependent on every single Jew. And in that sense, in the spiritual sense, Every Jew has a spark of Mashiach, and there were many people who were Mashiach throughout time. Chizkiah, Moshe, and David. You just heard 4 now, and the Gemara is going to give us more later. Shila, Menachem, Yanai, and we're going to see more names of people who were Mashiach in the spiritual sense, that they all lived their lives for this purpose, even if they weren't the halachic Mashiach. And this is going to help us understand a lot of the Gemara. It's going to go and talk about the identity of Mashiach himself, understanding this distinction between the halachic Mashiach, the person who actually fulfills it when it actually happens, versus the spiritual Mashiach, people who live their lives in dedicating themselves to the process of bringing the world to the place where this halachic Mashiach come on the scene.
That's validated by the argument that to do another mitzvah, because who knows, it might be this guy somewhere who just does that last mitzvah, brings Moshiach. You brought him.
That's
You're
right.
One.
That's
you
the famous
tipped the
Rambam.
scale finally.
That's the famous Rambam.
Yeah. Could be the first mitzvah he ever did in his life.
Yeah. The Rebbe once added, the Rambam once says, you're quoting a Rambam, this Rambam which says in Hilchos Tshuva that a Jew should see himself as if he's an equal scale, the entire world an equal scale, and every act he does can either tip the scale for the positive or the negative. In other words, every single Jew has the capacity within him to make that Mashiach reality. Maybe Yeshua, V'atzala, Loi, V'cholaylam, for himself and the whole world.
It's very empowering.
It's very empowering. So the Rambam writes that it could be one act or one speech, one thing he says, positive or negative. And Rebbe used to quote this Rambam very often. And one time Rebbe even added, Machshava achas, even one thought. Not just one speech or action, but even a positive thought has the capacity to go one way or the other.
It's all Levi that we should be able to, and like Ramban, the whole idea that we should put every word through 13 filters also.
Yeah, the famous...
Don't say. And very interesting how the subtle, indirect thought that comes here with regard to, because it was already the time of the formation of the Zarathustra philosophy of good and evil, as if they were divided, they were two.
Yeah.
The Zarathustra philosophy that Nietzsche speaks about, of course, and that's a tragedy of Hitler, really, that they took it in the way that they did. But very remarkable here also, and I always thought about that, each one of those great leaders, David and so on, Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, the greatest, and Hezekiah had in him everything, but what was that little but? And we're missing so many things, but Hezekiah, all he needed was that little bit of one more thing. What? To be able to dance and sing on the outside.
Yeah.
David had it even with his wife that was in opposition with
we talked about that before. They each missed one thing.
Exactly. So how to get that one more thing in ourselves? After Yom Kippur, I was thinking about, while you were teaching this and saying, what is the one more thing each time, every day that we